When is the last time? Because we stopped doing it, didn't we? Trying to work out what motivates him, what explains him, and his supporters, the people who he understood so implicitly when he described them as people who would not abandon him even if he shot someone in broad daylight on Fifth Avenue. We used to, if you're new to the programme or newish to the programme, you probably don't know. I mean, we still talk about it quite a lot because he is obviously the most important figure on the world stage by dint of being President of the United States. But we used to be a lot more hopeful about our ability to unpick him or our ability to understand him. Because if you want to know what somebody's going to do next, your best bet is to understand why they did the last thing that they did. And I realised some time ago that that is a waste of time with Donald Trump. In fact, there was proof positive of it this morning, not so much with the story about him suing the BBC while claiming that Liz Truss is the very paragon of witnesses for the support of his case, but more with the announcement that the tech deal that was, I think it was even signed. I certainly remember them standing in front of lecterns holding up documents, but the tech deal that was signed with the US as a sort of culmination of that ludicrous visit, that ludicrous state visit that saw every golden carriage in the country being pressed into service in order to drive Donald Trump and his wife around King Charles's garden. That culmination has now been paused. It was announced yesterday. Whether it's linked to the BBC story or not, I don't know. I suspect it is. He probably thinks Keir Starmer will be in a position to exert pressure on the BBC to pay. Keith's done a calculation. £209 each per licence fee payer. That's what it would cost to give Donald Trump $5 billion. And that is, of course, the only real income stream that the BBC has. So that would be 200. It's really us that he's suing. And remember, when I asked you earlier, is there anybody you can't be turned against? And I listed all the public sector people. But if you were to dip your toe into some of the sewers online now, lots and lots of British people have been turned against their own capital city, despite the fact that it routinely tops international polls as the best place to live, work, visit, and all the rest of it. But Billy Bunch of Numbers on Twitter is absolutely adamant, despite the fact that his account probably comes out of the Philippines or St. Petersburg. London is lost. London has fallen. So you can be turned against your own capital city. What else could you be turned against by these people? Things that you would never imagine you could possibly be turned against with lies. Firefighters, teachers, police officers, junior doctors, resident doctors, nurses, and now your own capital city. The list goes on. But the idea, and of course the BBC, that's why I'm wanging on about this stuff. You can be turned against the BBC, the state broadcaster. Incredible value. Imperfect institution. I've got enormous problems with some of their so-called journalism, but they can turn you against that as well. And in the words of Joni Mitchell, you won't know what you've got till it's gone. So Trump probably thinks that the Prime Minister will be able to exert pressure on the BBC to settle with him over this ludicrous lawsuit. But I don't know that that's the case. I don't know that the Prime Minister would have any ability to do that, despite politicians today calling upon him to stand firm. It was called the Technology Prosperity Deal, wasn't it? It was billed as historic when it was unveiled during that state visit, and it has now been paused, reportedly because the United States want more concessions and more capitulations from the United Kingdom. Said it at the time. And I'll say it again, no deal that Donald Trump signs or agrees to or whatever else, what other words you want, is worth the paper that it's printed on or the breath that is expended in explaining it. So that's the news from the Trumpiverse, except it's not. We gave up trying to work out what motivated him some time ago because the task was beyond us. It proved impossible. We heard words like sociopath quite a lot, narcissist quite a lot, malignant quite a lot. I'm slightly wary of getting too personal. I know that sounds naive, but, there's not much point being disgusted by someone's conduct if you don't try to be better. But he did something yesterday morning that I honestly thought must be a hoax. I honestly thought that this must be a spoof, a parody, or mischief, disinformation, fake news, to coin a phrase. And I'm going to read it to you in its entirety because I think it's the single most disgusting thing I can remember a senior politician doing in power. And senior politicians in opposition can be slightly different figures, can be slightly different creatures. Even all of the allegations of racist bullying being made against Nigel Farage at the moment didn't happen when he was in power, when he was in a political position, power over a country or just power over your own party. But Donald Trump took to his own social media platform yesterday to respond to the reported murder of Rob Reiner, objectively one of the finest film directors ever. I mean, we ran through some of his hits yesterday. I'll run through them again, lest you... And these are just the ones he directed. He was also, connected to and associated with various productions that he didn't actually direct. But you've got The Princess Bride, you've got When Harry Met Sally, you've got A Few Good Men, you've got Spinal Tap, you've got a couple of others as well that will come to me. Well, you'll text them to me in about 5 seconds. And it is the most extraordinary CV, the most extraordinary roster of successes. And him and his wife Michele were found dead in their home on Sunday night. Their own son Nick has subsequently been arrested for the murder. But Donald Trump took to social media to say the following. A very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away, together with his wife Michele, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness, and with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before. May Rob and Michele rest in peace! ! I can't unwrap that. I can shout words at it. I can shout words at you. But I can't unwrap that. You know that even with people who you don't admire, Misery and Stand By Me were the other two films. He was also involved with The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. I can't unpack it at all. And I hate that feeling. You know I do. I hate just being completely baffled by something. Baffled, discombobulated. Just looking at something and thinking the more I look at it, the more likely I am to understand it. The more we work together, the more we worry at something together. You know, you worry at a problem. That's the figure of speech. The more time we spend unpicking something, the more likely we are to unpick it. But this is hideous. 2 people have just been murdered. And I couldn't even put into words at the moment what he thinks he's achieving by doing. I couldn't even put into words what he thinks he's doing. Is he dancing on Rob Reiner's grave? He is, right? He's dancing on. And do you remember the reactions from Donald Trump supporters when Charlie Kirk was murdered? And people who, I mean, in my case, people who simply played out footage of Charlie Kirk saying things, speaking, came in for some criticism for not being suitably respectful, I think. I forget precisely what. Some people went too far for polite society. But for the President of the United States to dance upon the grave of a recently murdered man and a recently murdered woman with a succession of lies, not just about the circumstances of the murder, but also about the state of his own administration. It is, what's the word? What word would you use? There's a press conference in the Oval Office later where he effectively doubled down on this. We should probably have a little listen to that as well at some point. But what word would you use? Can you do it in a single word? You don't have to ring in with a single word. You can text it to 84850 or you can WhatsApp it to 03456060973. Grotesque, but grotesque could describe a picture. It goes deeper than grotesque. It is genuinely, and I'm always wary of posting anything or tweeting anything or saying anything that involves the phrase, I'm not often lost for words, but, because then you run the risk of somebody else pointing out that you've claimed that you're not often lost for words on at least 30 occasions. But I am obviously not often lost for words. It's what I do. I have this extraordinary job where I can come on air in the morning and tell you that I'm lost for words. And then, lo and behold, it turns out that I'm not, because once I start talking, words come out. But I haven't said anything yet. I've said words, but I'm lost for words to properly describe what I just read to you. I'm genuinely lost for words. And I don't know anymore whether it matters that this won't affect the people that think they like him or the people that think that he's on their side. I don't know whether it matters that he could shoot someone, yada, 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 Fifth Avenue, not lose a single vote. I think I find the absolute absence of humanity really chilling. But again, I'm lost for words. Chilling? What does chilling mean? What's chilling? Films are chilling, you know? This is the president. This is the crucial point you need to take on board before you tell me what you think is going on. The president of the United States of America, you know the old phrases, the man with the nuclear codes. The lying is now absolutely normal, right? The administration reaching new heights, surpassing all goals and expectations of greatness. The golden age of America upon us. Maybe people still suck this up. Maybe people still swallow this nonsense, but anybody capable of counting knows that none of that is true. But that's baked in now. That's part of our calculations. That's part of our shared reality. The President of the United States of America tells lies, like it's going out of fashion. He calls the truth fake news and he calls lies alternative facts. He's been doing that since he got into the White House. And unfortunately, that song has been sung. Didn't matter. Nobody cared. On he goes. But this, a man, I mean, still in the mortuary. His son under arrest for his murder, a son who's had well-documented problems with drugs and his own mental health. And the President of the United States of America gets his phone out and types this. A very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away, together with his wife Michele, reportedly due to the anger he caused others, is the first lie, through his massive, unyielding and incurable affection with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome. As we've said a few times, that is a phrase only used by people who are defending the indefensible and trying to pretend that the real problem lies with the people describing and condemning the indefensible. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness. And with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before, may Rob and Michele rest in peace. I mean, listen, none of us, well, you might, I don't have the qualifications to undertake any form of diagnosis here. I know that Rob Reiner was, many years ago, he talked about, well, about 4 years ago, he talked about a TV project he was doing called The Spy and the Asset, which would look at the relationship between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. I don't know what became of that, but there might be a personal animus in place here. How on earth did the director of When Harry Met Sally get so far under the president's skin that even by his standards, he's taken complete leave of his senses in a public forum? So that might be part of the answer to the question. But what on earth is happening here? It's the only question I've got for you. Let's see if you're any better than me at putting it into words. He was given an opportunity to, I don't know, withdraw, reverse, rethink, apologise, and he instead did this.
A number of Republicans have denounced your statement on Truth Social after the murder of Rob Reiner. Do you stand by that post?
Well, I wasn't a fan of his at all. He was a deranged person as far as Trump is concerned. He said he knew it was false. In fact, it's the exact opposite, that I was a friend of Russia, controlled by Russia. You know, it was the Russia hoax. He was one of the people behind it. I think he hurt himself in career-wise. He became like a deranged person, Trump derangement syndrome. So I was not a fan of Rob Reiner at all in any way, shape, or form. I thought he was very bad for our country. Yeah.
And you'll remember the reaction when Charlie Kirk died and people criticised him. And Donald Trump fans were at the forefront of people were threatened with deportation for not being sufficiently respectful. Absolutely shocking. And oddly, when Charlie Kirk died, Rob Reiner expressed his shock and sadness at it, saying it should never happen to anybody. It's beyond belief what happened to him. He described his absolute horror at seeing the events that unfolded, adding, I don't care what your political beliefs are, that's not acceptable, that's not a solution to solving to solving problems. And then he gets murdered, and Donald Trump, he just dances on his grave. But that's a figure of speech, it's not an explanation. What happened there? What's happening here? What exactly do you think is going on that such hideousness can be disseminated from such a high position?